Father, we just want to thank you for this time together. We can come together as family, Father, and we can sit at your feet. Thank you for this, your Shabbat, for your teachings, Father, for your Torah. That we can study out your word, Father, so we can better understand you, better get the understanding of Yeshua, Father. We just want to thank you that your Ruach would flow today, Father, that it would not just be words, Father, but change lives. And we know that you alone can do that. We just give you glory for it. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. Seriously? It's not that you too. And all right, Bereshit chapter 29. That's not going to take outside. So 28 left us where?
The ladder.
Okay, so birthright being stolen, running for our lives, going away for a few days to look for a wife. It's going to end up being?
Sleeping on a rock.
Sleeping on a rock and not being able to return home for the next 20 years. Okay? Now is that one that was Captain Deceiver is going to meet
The captain.
the real deceiver thereof. Okay, so just anointed the stones, negotiated with God. Remember, if you will do this, then you will become mine. And we're going to go into that from now. 29 verse 1. Continuing his journey, Yaakov came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in a field, and there were 3 flocks of sheep lying there next to it, because they watered the sheep from that well. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and only when all the flocks had gathered there would they roll away the stone away from the opening of the well and water the sheep. Then they would put the stone back in its place on its well's opening. Okay? So, setting the stage. He's coming to the place, he's arriving where he should, and everything is going to take place where?
At the
well.
At the well, all right. And if you have sheepies that are sitting there waiting, what is that telling you?
Thirsty.
This is the place where it happens.
All right. People that remember, they're gathering, different flocks are gathering there. Okay, so it doesn't say they all belong to one person.
No.
So this is common property, number one. Number two, whatever this well covering was, it took more than one person generally to move the stone so they could water it. So when they all came together, they would do it once off, then they would put the stone back, so that it's not just I came to water my flock, I moved the stone type of thing. Put it back when you're done, move on, the next guy will do it. They're all waiting. Okay, it doesn't mean that there's limited reserve in water, that means the stone is pretty big. Okay?
Or a big flock.
Right, or whatever covering, it's also extremely important. Verse 4 says, Yaakov said to them, my brothers, where are you from? They answered, we are from Haran. He asked him, do you know Lavan, the son or the grandson of Nahor? They said, we do. He asked them, are things going well with him? Yes, they answered. And here comes his daughter, Rachel with the sheep. He said, look, there's plenty of daylight left, and it isn't time to bring the animals home. So water the sheep and then go and put them out to pasture. They answered, we can't not until all the flocks have been gathered together and they roll the stone away from the opening of the well. That's when we water the sheep. Okay, so there's still time that they're hanging around the well. It's not like the end of the day type of thing, which is kind of interesting. While he was still speaking with him, Rachel came with her father's sheep because she took care of them. When Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Lavan, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Lavan, her mother's brother, Yaakov went up and rolled the stone away from the opening of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Let's pause. He sees Rachel, and then all of a sudden he gets this burst of strength. He moves the stone. Where previously they said they moved the stone. It's normally not done as a singular.
Sure.
Okay, so if we have this idea that Esau was this big burly boy and Jacob was maybe a little bit skinny and weedy, it's not the case. He just wasn't as outdoorsy and he wasn't as hairy, that's for sure.
So he was like a smooth version of his older brother for the in-laws.
I don't think he was probably as rough and ready, but yes, he wasn't this little skinny guy. But he was able to come in. Some commentators will say it was his love for Rachel that enabled him to do a massive
testosterone,
a massive feat of strength.
Look at me. No, but I mean, you've got to be stupid in case you fail. So, he must have known that he could do it.
Well, lots of different ideas. First of all, second idea is look at when this is taking place. Right? When Eliezer came looking for a bride for Isaac, where did everything take place? It was at a well. Okay? I find it interesting that discussion takes place over there. Okay? But we'll deal with that in a second. Rachel. Here we are seeing this parallel in the case of Eliezer bringing camels with wealth, using the test of the one who waters all the camels is the one that is chosen, and then he figures out who she is after. Here he goes, do you know Laban? That's his daughter. He already knows that she belongs to the family, obviously sees that she's very beautiful, gets excited, moves the stone, and then he's the one who does the watering. Okay? Remember, that kind of tells you something. His type of personality, at whose feet did he probably spend more time? At his mother's feet. He has that same sort of compassion, that same sort of servanthood, that same I'm here and I'll do what needs to be done. Okay? Yaakov kissed Rachel and wept aloud. Can you imagine this poor girl comes there with the sheep, sees some random guy, moves the stone himself, she waters everything, gives her a smooch, and then he starts crying.
Don't smooch her, that's a greeting.
A little kiss on the cheek?
Would have been a greeting, like the hello.
Yeah.
There's no raising moves in that cough.
Wasn't that type of smooch.
It,
And yeah, we're sitting over there. Can you imagine what she must have been thinking? I think, again, that same thing where
Being taken away.
Rebecca, okay?
Like she's gonna be taken away.
No, it's like this is the greeting, and then now all of a sudden, he didn't know her.
No.
Right? I think look at it, I'm trying to draw the parallels, right? When Rebecca was there, he all of a sudden gave glory to God, who she found out who she is, and then he pulled out gold and gave it to her. There was a bit of a shock moment here. Okay? Same thing happens with Rachel. And he weeps aloud. Yaakov told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rivka's son, and she ran and told her father. When Laban heard the news of Yaakov, his sister's son, he ran to meet him, hugged him and kissed him, and brought him into the house. Yaakov told Laban all that had happened. Laban said to him, "You are indeed my own flesh and blood." Okay, let's pause. Let's pause and pause. Okay, so here you see an interesting sort of parallel between Eliezer coming to get Rivka, Rebecca, and you're seeing Jacob coming in to get Rachel. Except this time, it's not his flocks, there's no camels involved. Laban gets excited to see a family member. I think Laban, I think his personality kind of gives him away. I think he was also excited about to see, well, last time you guys came, you brought 10 loads of camels with gold and all the rest of it. why are you alone? And Jacob has to tell him the story of why he's there. Okay? Pay attention to the words, you are indeed my own flesh and blood. Now, I think that is more than saying, oh, indeed, you're all my family. Because the way Jacob deceived, Laban will deceive him. And it's sort of like you and I are two peas in a pod. And I think that fullness of that statement is going to be shown up in the next couple of chapters. All right. I want to take us a step back, because a lot of the parallels with Jacob's ladder, like we saw in Genesis, is now everything being happened at a well. We're going to just take a stop and look at John chapter 4. Okay? John chapter 4 tells us when Yeshua met the Samaritan lady at a well. All right? Let's go through that, and then I want you to see if you can pick up some sort of parallel, because basically what's happening at the well here, if you had to summarize it for me.
John 4.
Yeah, John chapter 4. What happens at the well in Genesis? When
Then
Eli...
you get your bride.
Okay, so it's about a husband and a bride. In both cases, with Eliezer coming in and with Jacob coming in, I found my bride at the well. All right? I'm going to read from chapter 4, verse 5 onwards. He said he came to a town in Shomron called Shechem, near the field Yaakov had given to his son Joseph. So immediately it sets up the reality of, remember Jacob and Joseph. Jacob's well was there, so Yeshua, exhausted from the travel, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When we look at the time span, was it evening, or was there still plenty of the time for the flocks to be out?
Plenty of time.
Right, so it was happening, let's say, more or less in a similar time period. A woman from Shomron came to draw some water. Okay, here they come to draw water, except this time it's not just to look after flocks, this is for water for herself. Okay, and remember, in other places like Jeremiah and so on, God reveals himself as living water. Okay, remember the rebuke in Jeremiah says, you have put your faith in your own cisterns, cracked and broken cisterns that don't hold any water, and you have forsaken me, your source of living water. Okay, so living water, life-giving. Cracked cistern, man-made. Okay, this is what we do in harsh summer times when we don't get rain. We build a big hole and we hope that it sees us out as we go through, especially in sections where you don't get a lot of rain. All right? So they go draw at this well. She goes out to go draw some water. And Yeshua said to her, give me a drink. His Talmidim had gone into town to buy food, and the woman from Shomron said, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for water from me, a woman from Shomron? Okay, now let's pause there for a second. What is she doing there at noon? Is that the time women go to the well? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what is she doing there at noon?
Getting
want to be seen by people.
Well, she's going to go get water, but why doesn't she want to be seen by people? Is it the fact that she doesn't want to be seen?
Because she's committed a lot of sins.
Reputation.
Right, it's just that she can't go with the normal woman to the well. She has sort of been outcast. It's not that she doesn't want to be seen, it's just that she's almost been excommunicated from the community. She's been separated. Okay? She's out there by herself, the hottest time of the day, and she's out there drawing water. Yeshua asks her for a drink, and she's surprised that a Jew is talking to a Samaritan. Remind me again, what is a Samaritan? No.
A mixture between Hebrews and Greeks and Romans and everything else.
A mixture between Hebrews and the Assyrians. When they conquered the tribes in the north, they had this what's the word I'm using? Tactic to try and break down your allegiance to a piece of land. They would leave a certain group after they would trade off the rest as flocks or stocks, send them and sell them away wherever they go. And then I would take from the other lands that I've conquered and I would put a group of people together. They would then become the new territory of Samaria, and they don't really affiliate with anybody because it's a mixture of people groups, right? So you can't really rebel if you're part Assyrian, part Greek, part this, part that, all the rest of it. You know who you're going to rebel against. So then we come with this mixture of understandings that these guys are not really Hebrews, they're not really Jews, now they're Samaritans, and they have a difference of theological opinions. Okay, do you know that Samaritans today have their own Bible? The Samaritan version of the Tanakh, of the Torah, is also very close. It's got a few differences in the way they understand their things, in the way it's translated. Okay, they still keep Passover. They still take a sheep and they go slaughter it and all the rest of it. The biggest problems or discrepancies they have is they worship mainly on Mount Gerizim. Okay, what happened on Mount Gerizim? Do you guys remember?
Somewhere Jacob and his son.
No. Okay, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, when Joshua and them come into the land, they shout blessings and curses. 6 tribes on one side, 6 tribes on the other. If you do this, then this will happen. If you do that, then that will happen. Blessings and curses. The people that were on Mount Gerizim were reciting the blessings. So they go, okay, this is the Mount of Blessings. When David and them came in and they did what? They conquered the city of Jebus. They moved the tabernacle up and they built the temple. The Samaritans still worshipped on Gerizim. They never went up to Jerusalem. They said it was good enough for Abraham and them to worship over there. We don't need your temple. Mainly, again, because they were ostracized. Okay? So we have a big separation issue here. Yeshua answered her, if you knew God's gift. Remember, at the well, gifts were given, that which identified the bride. Okay? If you knew this gift, that is, who it is saying to you, give me the drink of water, then you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Again, it's interesting to me that the groom is standing at the well. She said to him, sir, you don't have a bucket and the well is deep, so where do you get this living water? You aren't greater than our father Jacob, are you? He gave us this well and drank from it, and so did his sons and his cattle. Yeshua answered, everyone who drinks of this well will get thirsty again, but whoever drinks of this water, I will give him, will never be thirsty again. On the contrary, the water I will give him will spring up water inside of him, a well up into eternal life. So give me some of this water, the woman asked, so that I won't have to be thirsty and keep coming here to draw water. He said to her, go call your husband and come back. She answered, I don't have a husband. Yeshua said to her, you are right, you don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands in the past, and you are not married to the man you're living with now. You have spoken truth. So let's take that from a perspective of Jacob or God picking his bride up at the well, and he says to her, go get your husband. What is he asking her?
In a sense, isn't he asking her to be faithful?
Well, partly. But remember, this is a rabbi, or this is God, right? And he's busy doing what rabbis do best. He knows what you're doing wrong, and he's going to ask you a question so that he can show you up. Remember, if you rebuke someone, you do it in a way where I ask you a question about what you're doing. And then you have to give me the answer. When you give me the answer, you're actually testifying against yourself. So then I'm not condemning you, you're condemning yourself. Your own words speak testimony against you. Right? And if you really listen to what's coming out of your mouth, you should weigh up and go, oh, actually, hang on a second, I shouldn't be doing that. Now, you do it in such a way where he kind of gets to the heart condition of the matter. Give me water. Oh, you don't have a bucket, and why are you talking to me, and all the rest of it. Oh, no, I'll give you real water. Oh, that's exciting. He says, go call your husband. Oh, I don't have one of those. And he goes, well, let's talk about that, shall we? He could have walked up to her and he goes, oh, you're the one who thinks it's okay to live with a man. And he could have completely hit her at that point, but he didn't. He said, I still want to give you living water, but this is reality. First, we have to recognize who you belong to. Now, in her mindset, who does she belong to?
Anybody that comes along.
Nobody, and the Samaritan groups. There's a separation of. She identifies purely as a Samaritan. I am of this, and I had those men, and now I'm just with someone.
Or she just said, I don't have a husband. She didn't admit any
She
husband.
doesn't
or
feel like she's
someone.
under anyone.
Mm.
And the guy, the groom, is looking at the bride, and he says, who do you belong to? It's almost as if he's kind of alluding to the fact of, you tried this, you tried that, you tried this. Doesn't it sound like Hosea to you? She ran after different husbands, whoever would give her gifts, and then nothing until she found peace, and then he brought her back and redeemed her. And it was like, I've been here in front of you the whole time. When you look at how you see yourself, that living water that you are going to need, this system of, here I am to come and fetch you, and you are marveled at the fact that I'm a Jewish person talking to you. It's almost as if he's got the setup here when he says, remember Jacob, I'm choosing you. You are a kinsman. You are part of the family. And a Samaritan is technically part of that reality. He says, but do you see yourself as someone who belongs to them or someone who belongs to God? And that living water is going to be that truth of, okay, who am I? That which I'm going to drink of, that which is going to set me free so that I can truly say I'm His. And that living water is a symbol of what, according to John? Or remember John chapter 7? Whoever is thirsty, come and drink. He says, in John 7, you guys can check me, he says this was an allusion to the Holy Spirit. And that Holy Spirit is the same thing that gives the gifts to the bride that identifies her as that who belongs to the groom. This living water, I will give it to you if you will just accept it. So it led me thinking, as I was pondering this sort of parallel, is that where in our lives did we get to the place where we had many husbands? We committed to things that wasn't God, hoping that it would give me living water, hoping that it would give me identity, hoping that it will give me peace, hoping that it will give me a place, hopefully it will give me understanding, hopefully it will give me identity, hopefully it will give me, you fill in the gap. And we committed to things that weren't Him. And He looks at you and He goes, where is your husband? We get so concerned about how the world perceives us or what we've committed to that we forget the biggest thing and only thing we should be committed to is the groom. It's God. This is what sticks out above all else. That's my living water. That's my bride price. That's the gift of the Spirit. That is who I belong to. He sees you, you're beautiful. He wants to take you home and He wants you to belong to Him and Him alone. And we are sitting there looking up and we're going, but I have many.
He loved us before we.
Yeah, I loved you before you loved me.
Before you loved me.
Welcome.
What if we look at this from a different mindset? I was just sitting and thinking about it. That, as Jesus was speaking to her and He said to her, you've had 4 different husbands, and now the one that you're living with is not your husband either. Whereas in the beginning of the story, your mind would actually think she's like had a husband, then left him and found another one, left him and found him. But in the Middle East and even today, women had a very low status.
Yeah.
So it could be that
She was rejected.
she had a husband and he dumped her, chucked her out, and then another guy came along, and so these were all useless, wrong husbands.
Yeah.
And Jesus is standing there, and he's basically giving her an option of choosing,
Choosing what?
the right one, instead of being abused by all these different husbands, and this one that she's living with is just using her also.
Right.
Mm.
It becomes partly her
Yeah.
choice, but she's also being kicked and rejected by so many other people.
Yeah, he's still
Mm.
showing worth
Yeah.
to her worth. No matter what has happened, I still would marry you.
So I want you guys just to take maybe a minute
That
or
is your
two.
worth.
I want you to take a minute or two and then just kind of identify where maybe you've invested in things that is not of God, and where the world or that investment has told you who you're not. You've never been good enough. You've never quite fit the mold. You've never quite done X, Y, and Z. And you thought, this is the one that's going to give me that identity. And it ended up cutting you the most.
Get involved with all different things, and none of them actually are stable. Truth. There's no truth in all those relationships.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then the question is, when we get confronted with the truth, what do we do? Do we grab hold of it? Do we live it out? Do we choose it 110% and saying, this is it? Or do we look for another? You see, the convenient truth and the actual truth are going to have two very different realities.
It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter the circumstances. But he is the one that you can hold on to.
Bring it back to that
And that's-
simple identity. If you are the bride of Christ, if you're the one he chose, why am I looking to another? Let's make it practical. I'll pick on my wife. If I can say to her, my license. If I look to her and I say, listen, I feel incomplete as a man because of maybe something my father said, maybe people teased me, maybe someone bullied me, and I said, the love of a good woman is going to make me feel whole and complete, and I'm finally going to be man enough. And I put that onto her.
Yeah, and
And
she
that
falls
becomes true.
short, big time.
And then when I look at her and she looks at me and she goes, oi, what are you doing? Seriously, what do you mean you can't rebuild a car engine blindfolded?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, how could you say that to me? I'm looking for my worth in the wrong place. When we come into marriage, sometimes we expect the other person to give me their identity. It doesn't work like that. I come in whole with my fullness of my identity in Christ, understanding who I am, what am I supposed to be, so that then I can love her for who she is, not what I want from her. You understand the difference? Right? What is that thing that has been allowed to define me that has not been Christ, not been truth, not been Torah, not been home? You won't have to come here during the hottest part of the day anymore because you feel rejected and unaccepted. I'm telling you, I came here on the hottest part of the day to choose you. To pick up a big stone and to throw it away just so that I could meet your need. Go back to Genesis. You guys can pray into that a little
Cancel
bit.
her abandonment.
Completely. Take away the hurt. Take away the thing that you think is going to sort you out. God pitches up and he says, hi, it's me. The one who is talking to you is he. So you guys can take some time and you can pray into that over the next week. Where did we get to? Verse
14.
Right, thank you. Laban said, "You are indeed my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with him a whole month, Laban said to him, "Why should you work for me for nothing? Just because you are my relative." Okay, now we can look at it and we can give Laban the benefit of the doubt and say, "Oh, look, he says, look, I want to pay you. Let me hire you. Let me help you out of your plight." Or we can look at Laban and he can go, "Listen, but let's talk about wages, because you can't just stay here and do nothing." Okay? I don't know what his intent was. I have an inkling. He says, "Tell me how much I should pay you." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger one is Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was good looking with beautiful features. And here I immediately start to think, you just deceived someone with what was the problem of his father? He couldn't see so good.
Yeah.
The dis-
Story.
Yeah.
He gets the bride that
Watch the setup of God going. So you thought it was okay to do that. This is what it's going to feel like. Okay? To learn from our lessons, sometimes we have to feel the brunt of what we did to others. Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel. Oh wait, before we get there. Why did he love Rachel?
Dat is mooi.
Daddy loved Esau because? Because of what he could get.
Now he wants a good-looking woman.
Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel and said, "I will work for you for 7 years in exchange for your younger daughter." Laban answered, "Better that I give it to you than to someone else. Stay with me." That's the bride price.
Yeah.
So Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, and it seemed only a few days to him because he was so much in love with her. Right?
Klomp geld, dat hoor.
That's 7 years of labor.
Salary.
Yeah.
In those days,
Can you imagine?
that's a klomp geld.
And he's saying, listen, it felt like just so that I could have you. And you see this interesting parallel of 7 years, and we're going to see 7 days, and then we're going to see 7 years and 7 days, and that whole cycle that comes in. So Laban agrees to it, and he does so happily. Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife since my time is finished so that I can start living with her." Laban gathered all the men of the place and gave a banquet. In the evening he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went in and slept with her. Laban also gave his slave girl Zilpah to his daughter and Leah as his slave girl. In the morning Jacob saw that he was with Leah. Now you've got to stop and you've got to ask yourself the question, at what time of the party did the eyeball stop working?
Was she covered the whole time, her face
She
and the whole
probably,
That's why we've got this tradition at the
Yes.
Okay, I got the right
she
one.
was probably veiled, and in maybe in his excitement and exuberance, because there's a part of the wedding ceremony, I can't tell you it dates back to here, but definitely in the time of Christ, part of the celebration was consummation. Okay?
So everybody
Confirmation.
knew what was going to happen.
That which happens on your wedding night.
Curtain room.
Right. So you would, while all the wedding guests were still at the party, your best man would be sitting at the door. The two of you would walk
At
in.
the door.
I see him in the
Yes, it's a curtain. He's standing there. You two would disappear in. You would give him the thumbs up and saying, "It's done." He would announce it to the party. "It's been consummated." That's amazing. Everybody would clap.
Dat is niet
I've not seen it
echt
1,000 times. I want to get remarried again that way, but not that way. Not that way. We leave that part out.
Those would leave the tent, the parents would come in and take the sheet
Yeah.
as a guarantee or then this would belong to the parents of the bride, and they would keep that sheet if anybody came in and said she was impure and brought a false accusation against her. It would become a proof. Right. So remember when John says, it is my privilege to announce, he was using that best man thing of, I'm the guy who stood at the door. It is done. Puts a completely different spin on things of, it is finished when he's sitting on the cross. It's kind of like in this illusion to what's coming. You're following? Okay. So in this point, maybe he didn't remove the veil, i.e. he was tricked by what he saw. Now, some commentators will say it seemed like Jacob, being extremely smart, set him up by giving him the slave girl Zilpah. Now, apparently, according to Jewish commentaries, I cannot tell you this for sure, that Zilpah actually belonged to Rachel. So when he saw Zilpah, his natural assumption was, there's my bride, it has to be Rachel. Okay, but instead, he set Leah up, he gave her a veil, he went in, consummation happened, and by the time he realized what had happened, he saw that it was Leah. All right, so again, the play on. You wanted the birthright. Now we're going to see this play out again. In the morning, Yaakov saw that it was Leah, and he said to Lavan, what kind of thing is it that you've done to me? Didn't I work for you for Rachel? Why did you deceive me? Laban answered, in our place that isn't how it's done, to give the younger daughter before the firstborn. All right, now this is apparently documented in Babylonian understanding as well. You never, if anybody is to be married, it's the eldest. Now let's think about this for a second. Whose responsibility was it to marry Leah? Should have been Esau. He was the firstborn. But remember, he spurned his birthright and didn't want anything to do with it, so then it became whose responsibility? Oh, so you just want to skip and you go straight to Rachel, and he goes, no, this is not how it's done.
You must go down the line.
You have a responsibility as firstborn. You will take Leah first. So this is something that was culturally done, except Jacob wanted to skip because he only wanted what he saw. He saw the pretty one. He saw, that's the one I want. I fell in love with her. And he completely overlooked his responsibility. Okay.
I think Laban set him up right from the beginning.
Probably.
That's why he got so excited when he heard that this was, blood of his blood and that. He thought, now I'm going to get rid of Leah.
I think it was when he said marriage, he probably knew what was
Yeah,
coming.
he knew. He never mentioned this before the time. He only mentioned this
After.
thing after
He
that.
did say, didn't you know?
Yeah.
You didn't bother to find out.
Yes,
You
it's
don't know how
the- yeah.
customs law. Also, he got all the men in the village.
Yes.
And a banquet. I mean, this was,
It was a big
the
feast.
wine would flow.
Yes. It's a 7-day
That's
party.
part of, yes, that's part of the inebriation.
Yep. It's
You
possible.
don't see
Yeah.
too well when you are inebriated.
And yes, maybe it only happened under candlelight.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That dimly lit room.
Set up is set up.
Completely.
But I mean, yeah.
This is again how Isaac was set up. Is
Yeah.
Jacob is being set up. It happened in a tent.
Exactly the same.
Be-
Flesh and blood, we will set you up.
Can you see exactly the way they operated? Okay? The second thing is I want you to put yourself into the emotional shoes of Jacob for a second. How do you feel?
Very
Okay.
much betrayed.
Betrayed. Okay? But there's going to be a but clause here, so he's going to get his bride. How would you feel if you were Rachel?
He doesn't
And
want
she
me.
had to keep quiet through the whole wedding. She wasn't
She was
allowed to.
probably on another plot.
Yes.
Keep quiet, that you couldn't
Well,
hear
They
her
what?
took her
screaming.
away.
Under a gag and muzzle. Imagine
Not wanted.
she knew this was happening. She knew that was playing out. She goes, "That is my husband, and my sister has stolen him."
Oh, she would have. Oh.
Okay.
And I well up.
What you're going to see is you're going to see a deeply rooted problem because of his favoritism, just like Jacob and Esau. One was favored, one wasn't. We're going to see this play down the line all the way through the sons. How would you feel if you were Leah?
Second hand.
happy and like he doesn't.
But Daddy, he doesn't want me.
Yeah.
Put on your veil. Don't say a word.
Oh. I won't
Let me use you.
Your wedding night, and in the morning, veil comes off.
Yeah.
You?
Not you, the one I don't want.
Yeah.
Where's my wife?
Not good enough.
I'm your wife.
I
What
think
do
Leah was probably all going with the whole plan because she thought, now I'm getting married and he's gonna love me when I give him.
Well, that's the thing. I think you see it in the way she names her children. I think she understands that
Well,
there's
she realized afterwards that
how
she
much it
couldn't,
was.
you know, he didn't play the husband part except for
How could you?
making children.
How could you? And again, even that is gonna be a lot of push and pull between the ladies.
But if you look a bit further here, which I find very intriguing, is that it says here he spent it's like a week or something. He finished the marriage week
Yes.
of this one,
Yeah.
and then he gave him Rachel straight away.
Yes.
He didn't work another 7 years and then get Rachel.
Yeah, but he had to
No, he
work
still
the
had to
7
work
years
after.
with her. Yes.
Yes. So now Leah's got this double whammy. You know, she's been rejected, and all of a sudden her sister's now the second wife.
Yes.
Oh,
Which is
I thought it only happened.
No,
let's listen.
Read
It says
on, yeah,
verse
you
27. It says, "Finish the marriage week of this one. We'll give you the other one also in exchange for the work you will do for me for yet another 7 years." Now think about that. He was happy to work for 7 years for the beautiful one.
Yeah.
You mean I just worked 7 years for the one I didn't want? So the father saw each one of equal value, but they were not of equal value to the husband.
I thought you only got it after 7 years. Because that was commitment.
But this,
He got it
this
after
is
a week.
you got to know
Yeah.
Laban. He's like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll hook you up." It's like, "Oh, you went for the birthright with some soup. Oh, but yeah, quickly we're gonna give you the other responsibility as well."
It was a
He deceived his brother and his father, and yeah, he's getting deceived and pushed into a position where he shouldn't be, but because of deception, he finds himself in it. This is very different from God said, "I will give you it." If God had ordained the blessing, none of this would have happened. And we're going to see the offshoot of making plans, like Sarah with Hagar, what it's going to look like down the line, and it's only going to breed resentment between brothers. And this is going to be your setup for why Joseph gets thrown into a hole and sent off.
Yeah.
Not just because he was a snotkop, but because the way my mother was treated.
Yeah. Favoritism.
Listen to the way this thing plays out. It is very much family orientated. Jacob agreed to this, so he finished her week, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave to his daughter Rachel, his slave girl, Bilhah, as a slave girl. So not only did Jacob go in and sleep with Rachel, but also loved Rachel more than Leah. Then he served Laban another 7 years. So imagine, you have a wedding week. How is Leah feeling? As soon as he gets Rachel, she is pushed aside. Who does she cry out to? It's going to be to God. Adonai saw that Leah was unloved. He made her fertile, while Rachel remained childless. Leah conceived and gave birth to a son, whom she named Reuben, which means see a son. These names in the list of names are going to be important. For she said, it is because Adonai has seen how humiliated I have been, but now my husband will love me.
She's trying.
She's saying, if I could just give him a son, then he will love me. He has a son. Still doesn't love her. She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and said, it is because Adonai has heard that I am unloved. Therefore, he has given me this son also. So she named him Shimon, which means hearing. Don't you find it funny that we'll find out later that Laban has household idols, but Leah is praying to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
And Rachel still stole one of them.
We're going to get to that. Once more, she conceived and had a son, and she said, now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, she named him Levi. She conceived yet again and had a son and said, this time I will praise Adonai, therefore his name is Judah. Then she stopped having children. How do you think Leah is feeling right now?
Sad. So she's giving me all the
A bit unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And
Incomplete.
Unloved.
she's so busy trying to get his attention, but listen to the story of how she's worshiping God.
Yeah. She's actually gotten close to God.
Don't you think it's funny? Out of the lineage that will come Messiah, it comes out of Leah.
Judah.
Oh,
Judah. Yeah.
Judah.
that's true. Yeah.
See, we had this, okay, fine, I'll take the second one, not the first one. And God was like, no, we've done that a few times. I've skipped the first one, I've touched the second one. This is the seed of the first and the second and the first and the second. And here comes Judah out of
Yes.
the line. The seed line is going to come from the fourth now.
Judah and
Because as he
Levi.
wants,
Yeah.
as God says, that's it.
This is going to be the lineage. Okay?
And we don't accept that. No.
Now, just quickly, no, we'll do that. I'll do that a little bit later. I want you to just pay attention to Leah's sons. She's going to have some more now, and then we're gonna play a game called Looking Up the Names, and you're going to tell me a story about Messiah. There's actually prophecy in the list of Leah's sons. Never mind all of the others. Okay, but for now, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll start chewing the next section. All right, so pick up where we left off. Leah gets 4 different sons at this place, and again, she's wanting kids because she feels unloved. She is stuck in this affliction type of thing. And again, we have a similar little parallel. Who was feeling unloved because of persecution from another woman? Yes, Hagar. Remember, the competition was on. Who had the first children, and from then it was all downhill. Right? We have a similar reality here. Rachel and Leah. Leah's winning the argument, saying, if I could just get some love from my husband, and yet, unfortunately, the heart is still not there. So in chapter 30 it says, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing children for Jacob, she envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children or I will die.
And the award goes to Rachel. Drama queen.
Who
Now,
also said something, die ander vrou het ons ook gesê.
well, Sarah quarreled and quarreled and quarreled and quarreled, but that was, again, that setup, right? But look at this. Give me children. Now, number one, if we were to assume there was an issue with barrenness or some body part not working, if Jacob and Leah are really having kids, the problem will probably most lie with who on the other side? Her. But instead of saying, why am I barren? Why Adonai has not heard my prayer? What does she do? She blames Jacob. You give me children, or I will die. This made Jacob angry at Rachel. He answered, am I in God's place? Or your translation might say, am I God?
Yeah.
Right?
No, God's place.
So, what is he saying? Why does he get frustrated with this?
Because he knows it's not him.
Right, and it says, if Abba had opened up the womb, or if Adonai had opened up the womb of your sister, I am not capable of, I do not. And again, yet look at the question. She says, you need to do this or else. And again, that'll lead you down a road of thinking. When we look at people and ask them to act in God's place, sort out my problem, do it now. Sometimes we kind of see that reality in different congregations where people look at leadership and they say, solve my issue. Or you tell me what God is saying, because you don't want to sit and actually pray.
You're actually a person of God, so you tell me what He's saying.
Yeah. Which, again, this is now putting a person in that position. We can't. Do you know of another lady, and this is going to be... yeah, there we go. Hannah, a different parallel, where Hannah was the mother of who?
Samuel.
Okay, what was her response when she couldn't have kids?
She prayed and prayed. And the priest said she was verdriet.
Right, Eli saw over there. She went to go pray, and then she was mournful. She was praying, and words weren't coming out, but cheers. And then he says, "Listen, can you please stop drinking when you come and pray here?" He says, because it's not normal for someone to pray silently, right? In that culture, you pray, and I can hear your prayers, and I can pray that may Adonai help you with whatever you're going on. And then she said, "No, look, I'm not drunk. I'm just really upset." And he goes, "Oh, okay. Then may God hear your heart." But here, instead of being like Hannah, and again, and perhaps like Leah, instead of reaching out to God, she goes straight to the husband. Said, listen to Jacob's answer. He's the one who is denying your children. She said, here is my maid Bilhah. Go sleep with her and let her give birth to a child that will be laid on my knees, so that through her I too can build a family. Again, we're making... Well, Hagar.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a child.
Well, there was an expression that if I would give you my maidservant and she would give birth and the baby would become put on my knee, it was my version of adopting it. Yeah. This will be as it is my child, right?
The servant had no say in it. How do you do it? You die.
No, not so much die. I think it's just a case of
You know your place.
this is what we're going to do, and it's for the greater good of the community, and God will take away my shame because of this, so will you do this for me? And then it becomes this whole thing. Remember, in this time, the biggest thing a woman can do is bear a son as an heir. Now, if you're not getting that right, which leads me to ask other questions.
I just want to know, was it custom to that everybody would know that the slave would...
Yeah. She would be taken as a concubine or as a... Remember, this is not instructed by God. This is now just a case of God dealing in a very normal mindset of the culture in the time. Okay?
We do it nowadays and call it surrogacy.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And it's, between women it's like we're helping you out, but between this it's boss and servant. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do the photocopying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nowadays you can have your own child in somebody else's womb.
Yes.
Parents of both.
Yeah. We've taken it to a different level.
Yeah.
So
if you're a slave, you will get benefits.
well,
You get time off, you breastfeeding, you this, you that, you get elevated a little bit because
So you basically get to do what the mom does, but you're not really
but even
reliable.
after that, even though you are higher than the others, which is, good pay.
well, you'll be included now as concubine type of vibe as well, right? So she goes in and she says, maybe this is the plan. We make our own plans. So she gave him Bilhah, her slave girl, as a wife, and Jacob went in and slept with her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. And at that point, I think Rachel could have been like, really?
Couldn't it be a girl?
No, not, I don't know. She wanted a son. But now, again, if Bilhah could do this, then the fault really sits with me. Okay? Rachel said, God has judged in my favor. So she saw it as a blessing. Indeed, he has heard me and given me a son. Therefore, she called him Dan. Bilhah, Rachel's slave girl, conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Rachel said, I have wrestled mightily with my sister and won. Look at the competition. She's had 4 children, we have had 2, and now we're winning. And called him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped giving children, she took Zilpah, her slave girl, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Zilpah, Leah's slave, bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, good fortune has come, and she called him Gad. Zilpah, Leah's slave girl, bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, how happy I am, woman will say I am happy, and she called him Asher. Now, there's a few ways we could probably look at this, but I'm seeing this man being passed around like, This is going to create a whole bunch of issues, and it gets worse.
He's free from me, so.
Yeah. During the wheat harvest season, Reuben went out and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes so that you can be fertile. She answered, isn't it enough that you have taken away my husband? Do you have to take my son's mandrakes too? Rachel said, very well, in exchange for your son's mandrakes, you sleep with him tonight. Now, tell me again about this family dynamic.
Just pay for it.
This guy is literally being traded around. Number 1. Number 2, why the mandrakes? Okay, apparently in that time, 2 different thoughts. 1, it was an aphrodisiac, trying to get to make them more fertile. 2, it was apparently something that just created fertility. You don't know. It was their common misconception. And what happens? Oh, you want this stuff? Oh yeah, well don't worry, you can have him tonight. So
Can you have who? Jacob. or the son?
Jacob. This man is being traded around like cattle. Now he's being swapped around for roots. Listen to what he says. He says, be exchanged for the mandrakes, you can sleep with him tonight. When Jacob came in from a field that evening, leaving, Leah went out to meet him and said, you have to come and sleep with me because I have hired you with my son's mandrakes.
I've hired you.
Now, I don't know about a patriarchal system in this reality here. This seems like he's just trying to keep everybody happy because of this push-pull between these 2 women. Now he's sitting in this situation and he's seeing children upon children upon children, and no matter how many children they have, they're just not happy.
And he just keeps making babies. For him.
Yep.
Happy days.
So Jacob slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a 5th son. Leah said, God has given me my hire because I gave my slave girl to my husband, so she called him Issachar, which means higher reward. Leah conceived again and bore a 6th son to Jacob. Leah said, God has given me a wonderful gift. Now at last my husband will live with me. Since I have borne him 6 sons, and his name will be called Zebulun.
No, this is.
Well, it was 6 sons was the gift. 6 sons, Zebulun. Okay? After this, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah, which is apparently a play on the words controversy over rights. Then God took Rachel, heeded her prayer, and made her fertile. So now all of a sudden there's that shift. She conceived and had a son. God has taken away my disgrace, and she called him Joseph, which means may he add, saying, may Adonai add to me another son. After Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way, so I can return to my own place, to my own country. Let me take my wives, for whom I have served you, and my children, and let me go. You know very well how faithfully I have served you. Laban answered him, if you regard me favorably, then please listen. I have observed the signs that Adonai has blessed me on account of you. Name your wages, he said, and I will pay them. So here we get negotiations again. He says, my time has passed. What is the time that's passed?
7 years.
Right. So they had a 7-year plan for Leah. 7 days of festival. Then he married Rachel. And he started a 7-year term probably after another 7 days of feasting. Okay? All in all, it's going to tell us in a bit that he's going to work. He worked 14 years for his wife and 6 years for his flocks. Remember, he was going to go get a wife and then he was going to come home. Now he's stuck being in deception and he's being pushed and pulled around in this family dynamic.
And how many children have you had?
Plenty.
Jacob, yeah,
Can
I'll tell you what.
go with more than just a wife.
Let's pause there for a second. Sons of Leah, what do you have?
Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dinah's daughter.
Okay. So, Reuben means
A son. A son.
God is giving it.
A son.
Reuben means see a son.
See a son.
Simeon means heard.
Heard, yeah.
Levi
Join.
joined. I've got another interpretation of that means or my heart.
Yeah, my heart.
Judah means praise. Issachar, hire or reward. And Zebulun, live together or dwell. Tell me a story about Christ.
See, he was a son.
Here. See a son who has heard my heart. Praise. Your reward will be to dwell together. Okay. Remember what Yeshua said, the greatest prophet. If you did not believe Moses, you will not believe me. He's, again, just like Bereshit, there are these little moments, and in Genesis 10, where we have these little snippets of prophecy. Okay? And we'll see it through a few times. What I find interesting about this list, and I'll mention it now, is that you will have a list of the sons or the tribes being played out. And almost every time they get listed in different order. If you were to stack them again and again and again in their listings, either via blessings or their inheritances and all the rest of it, that tells a different story every time. All the way to the point of Revelations. Right? Where we have these things where Dan gets left out in the one and people make a big thing about it, and then we draw an illustration. But if you do that consistently, you'll see that certain ones get left out at different times anyway, because it tells a different story. Okay. So just be aware of that. So, Laban is busy negotiating. He says, name your wages because I've seen that God is with you, and I will pay them. Jacob replied, you know how faithfully I have served you and how your livestock have prospered under my care. The few you've had before I came have increased substantially. Adonai has blessed you wherever I went, but now when I provide for my... When will I provide for my own household? Laban said, what should I give you? Nothing, he answered. Nothing, answered Jacob. Just do this thing for me. Once more, I will pass to your flock and take care of it. I will also go through the flock and pick out every speckled, spotted, and brown sheep and every speckled or spotted goat. These and their offsprings will be my wages. And I will let my integrity stand as witness against me in the future. when you come to look over the animals constituting my wages, every goat that isn't speckled or spotted, and every sheep that isn't brown will count as stolen by me. Laban replied, as you have said, so be it. That day Laban removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled or spotted, every one with white on it, and all the brown sheep, turned them over to his sons, and put 3 days' distance between himself and Jacob. Jacob fed the rest of his flocks. Did Jacob know that Laban was going to go out and create a separation? It doesn't look that way. So if I say, listen, okay, if there are little babies and some of them are a little bit this color and a little bit, that'll be for me. And if they're pure, then they'll be for you. So the logic is while we're looking at all the flocks, if there's intermingling and all the rest of it, it's great. So Laban says, no, I'm going to take that. So now you won't have any of those genes. So the only ones that are going to reproduce should be pure, which are only mine, i.e. you're never going to get paid. And we don't just move them away one day, we move them away 3 days journey. So there's no way you're going to be able to catch them and catch me off guard. Okay, the deception happens again. Jacob took fresh cuts of branches from popular almond and plane trees and made white streaks on them by peeling off their bark. Then he set the rods that he had peeled upright in the watering trough so that the animals would see them and when they came to drink, and since they bred when they came to drink, the animals mated in sight of the rods and gave birth to streaked, speckled, and spotted young. Now, I'm no farmer or no vet or anything, but I think this would probably be more miraculous than anything else. We can actually see that he gets the idea from a dream he has. Jacob divided the lambs and had all the animals mate with the streaked and the brown in the flock of Laban. He also kept his own livestock separate and did not have them mixed with Laban's flock. Whenever the hardier animals came in to eat, Jacob would set up the rods and the watering troughs so that the animals would see them and conceive in front of them, but he didn't set up the rods in front of the weaker animals. Thus, the more feeble were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. In this way, the man became very rich and had large flocks along with male and female slaves, camels, and donkeys. When he came in, no camels, no donkeys, no flocks.
He had just himself.
Yeah.
And look at how God, even in the midst of his trials, has continued to be with him. Okay? But then he heard what Laban's sons were saying. Jacob has taken away everything that our father once had. It's from what used to belong to our father that he has gotten so rich. Truth? No, we want to blame everybody else for the fact that you're rich and we're not. He also saw that Laban regarded him differently than before. Adonai said to Jacob, return to the land of your ancestors, to your kinsmen. God has been eerily quiet over these last 14 years, don't you think? Now all of a sudden he says, okay, remember I said I would bring you back? It's now time to go back.
Where are you now? 31?
Yeah, 31 verse 3.
Isn't it amazing? God waited for him to have all of this.
Yeah.
Now he's taking it back. He didn't just give him his wife and said, okay, go back.
Now why do you think it is?
Character.
Maybe.
Okay.
Probably Esau's wrath also has to settle down.
Right, so remember, if I've taken over all of it, if I go in and I take all the inheritance for myself, now God is showing him that he doesn't need that wealth, he actually has his own.
It's for his own now.
So whatever he's going to bring back, and later we will actually see how massive this is, because when he starts to separate his stuff into camps, it's literally the size of the Dead Sea.
Sure.
And now we're talking about, that's a fair drive from one side to the other. It's I don't want to lie to you, but it's around 40 kilometers or something along that time, that long.
On foot.
Yeah, so he would separate camps and all of the stuff would actually go out before him. Okay? Adonai said to Jacob, return to the land of your ancestors, to your kinsmen, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent for Rachel and Leah and had them come to the field where his flock was. He said to them, I see by the way your father looks that he feels differently toward me than before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I served your father with all my strength, and that your father has belittled me and has changed my wages 10 times. So he wasn't deceived just with the marriages. Every time he started to set him up, Laban changed the terms of the contract. But God did not allow him to do me any damage. He said, the speckled will be your wages. Then all the animals gave birth to speckled young. And if he had said, the streaked will be your wages, then all the animals gave birth to streaked young. This is how God has taken away from your father's animals and give them to me. Once, when the animals were mating, I had a dream. I looked up, and in front of me were the male goats, which mated with the females, were streaked, speckled, and mottled. Then in the dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob, and I replied, here I am. He continued, raise your eyes now and look. All the male goats mating with the females are streaked, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen everything Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bet-El, where you anointed the standing stone with oil, where you vowed your vow to me. Now get up, get out of this land, and return to the land where you were born. So, set the stage. You're sitting over there, Laban, Rachel, and Leah's father. This is what's been going on. You've been having your competition between favoritism, what's going on. Meanwhile, Daddy's been trying to dupe you out of your money. Who comes to your defense? God pitches up. Okay? Jacob could have pulled a sneaky and tried to deceive him with many other different tricks, but he seems to have learned from that, and being deceived isn't much fun. So now he says, he gives a speech to his children, to his wives. Notice, I think it's pleasing that he calls them for counsel and he says, this is what's been going on. This is what God has said. Now what are we going to do? We normally see God meets with Abraham, go. And they all go. Isaac, this is what's going to happen. And this is what's going to happen. God does meet with the ladies, but here he calls a family meeting. And he says, this is what Adonai has said. Verse 14 says, Rachel and Leah answered him, we no longer have any inheritance from our father's possessions, and he considers us foreigners since he has sold us.
Sure.
Moreover, he has consumed everything he received in exchange for us. So, do you see a little bit of resentment between I'm struggling in my marriage with this man, my husband, because of what my father did? And if that wasn't bad enough, now he's stealing everything else. Nevertheless, the wealth which God had taken away from our father has become ours and our children's anyway. So whatever God has told you to do, do. And I really like that verse. If you've gotten to the place where you're sitting there and your wife is able to go, if you've heard from God, that's what we're going to do. Interesting that it's coming out of this household that is so busy doing the push and pull reality that they're not really, you wouldn't ever say they were at this place in maturity. Then Jacob got up, put his sons and wives on camels, and carried off their livestock, along with all the riches he had accumulated, the livestock in his possession which he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to Yitzhak his father in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, so Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father. You guys have anything else there? Okay, the word for household idols in Hebrew is teraphim. Teraphim. Now, teraphim is an interesting way of looking at it because there was a person called Terah in the Bible. Who was Terah?
He was one of the people. Yeah.
Now, why would I say Abraham's fathers when I talk about household idols?
Grandpa.
It's a really weird way of calling Opa.
Daddy.
Okay, so this is where there's an interesting wordplay. It could be based on the word image, and some people believe because it was associated with Terah, that it has more to do with an ancestral worship or likeness. Okay, so they would seek ancestor approval, or this was household gods. Teraphim, sadly enough, pop up in a number of places in the Bible. Josiah does a massive reform as one of the kings, and he says he breaks down all the altars of Baal and he clears out Israel and does all the rest of it. And you know what they found more archaeologically at the time of Joshua than anything else in people's houses? Household idols. So if we cannot worship our gods in public, we will do it in private. So now you're sitting here, you've got this whole push-pull between Adonai, and the fruit is being seen by Rachel and Leah. Laban also says, I have been blessed because of your father's God. We've seen his hand in our lives. We have benefit from it, and he still has household idols. Tell me a story. What is that about?
They still want, they still divide, they still want their ways.
Okay.
That's maybe how he grew up. Because he was there when his sister Rebecca was still in the house.
Right? So what does that tell you about people?
We're stupid.
We're stupid. That generally people don't want to give up their ways even when they see what God is busy doing in other people's lives. Like you think of Capernaum, you think of Chorazin, you think of those moments where they saw miracles and yet they chose to ignore the signs. You're only going to see what you want to see. You're only going to obey what you want to obey. You only want to do things according to the way you want to do things, unless you surrender everything, which is what baptism is about, which is what discipleship is about. Everything in your life should change. It is a very difficult thing, and this is why Yeshua says, count the cost before you do it. When we get baptized, we normally get into that water with a mindset of, God's going to take away my sin. He's going to wash me clean so that I won't be that sinner anymore. All my mistakes are washed away, right? Mm-hmm. That is the only mindset a lot of people get in there. But is that the full mindset of what you should have? He's not going to take away just your sin. He's not just going to take away your consequence. He's going to take away your right to your life, because that leads to death. When you come up out of that water, you said, I am going to give you everything that I am. And realign yourself, not with the way you do things, but the way he does things. And that is going to transform you to everybody. Because you're going to think differently, you're going to act differently. And as you slowly become more conformed into the image of God, you are then going to celebrate differently. And that's supposed to be a joyous thing. That's supposed to be a celebration of thing. And it is not just, I'm going to keep my household idol. When no one else is looking, this is what I'm going to hold on to. I want God's blessing in my life, but I won't give up my idol.
How many people celebrated Halloween?
Yeah.
Christians only.
But we do it. Whatever we're comfortable keeping, we keep. Whatever we don't want to give up, we don't give up. Even if God proves himself to be real. And that's a scary thing. I think we need to look at that. All right? So she goes in. Rachel stole his idols that belonged to her father. What the heck? Why would you do that? Why would she go and do that?
Maybe she feels like she at least wants something from him. And some type of inheritance.
Maybe. You stole everything else. I'm taking your fun stuff. What else?
I'm taking your fun
It could be that she's trying to be loyal to her gods.
Okay. It could maybe be. But I mean, she's been praying to Adonai and she said, whatever God has told you to do, we can do. So maybe. What else? You think she's trying to get back at her father for anything?
Yeah,
Ah.
she had faith in the idols.
She possibly did. But she's talking about Adonai.
She grew up with them. Part of her life. She watched her father doing it. She thought she must take some of it with so she can get some of the idol's blessing.
Yeah, but her daddy has taken all her stuff from her. So now she'll take some of his stuff.
I don't know if she thought maybe I'm going to keep these so I can pray to them, because remember she was praying to Adonai and Adonai opened up a womb and then Adonai opened up again and then they listened to this whole thing. This is what God has done, and they said whatever God has told you to do. It seems to be the continual thing of God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob.
She takes it away so that he doesn't have them anymore.
Maybe. I don't know if it's out of spite or what, but whatever she thinks she's doing, she's bringing something impure into the camp where God is. So again, it's not going to work out great. And Yaakov outwitted Lavan, the Aramean, by not telling him of his intended flight. Deception.
Again.
So he fled with everything he had. He departed and he crossed the Euphrates River, or crossed the river, and set out for the hill country of Gilad. It's interesting that the same sort of wordplay happens when they leave Egypt. They fled and they crossed the river, and then you're going to see something now. Laban is going to pursue. They fled, they crossed the river, and Pharaoh pursued. It's the same pattern. Laban took his kinsman with him and spent the next 7 days. 7 days? Where have we seen that before?
With the deception.
It's the wedding. Here we go again. Pursuing Jacob, overtaking him in the hill country of Gilad. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream that night and said to him, "Be careful that you don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Now, if we just stopped there, I would have just.
Yes.
That would have been me. I would have been happy with that reality. Now think about it. God jumps in and meets with a guy who's chasing them down because they stole his household idols. Because that's generally what's going on here. Well, we have, again, this is like God appearing to Balaam. And there's this moment where he looks at him and he goes, "Be careful what you say."
Yeah.
Now, is Jacob aware of this?
No.
Not even one bit. God is having conversations on your behalf with other people you don't even know about. He's sitting there where the enemy is trying to curse and he's saying, "Nope, there's going to be blessings here, so you can try all you might." The biggest thing that you can do is you make sure that you stay in the will of the Father so that you don't get into that trap. When Laban caught up Jacob, and Jacob had set up camp in the hill country, so Laban and his kinsmen set up camp in the hill country of Gilad. Laban said to Jacob, "What do you mean by deceiving me and carrying off my daughters as if they were captives taken in war?" Perception. "Why did you flee in secret and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you off with joy and singing with music, tambourines and lyres." Emphasis on probably lyre. "You didn't even let me kiss my sons and daughters goodbye. What a stupid thing you do. I have it in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night and said, 'Be careful that you don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.'" The God of your father. Sorry, Amadal?
He just did that, good and bad.
Yeah.
I would just not say anything.
Yeah, it's like, I could have sorted you out, but God told me not to. "Granted that you had to leave because you long so deeply for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "Because I was afraid. I said, suppose you take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find the gods with someone, that person will not remain alive." Right, and we know what happens because of this, right? He speaks a rash vow. The person who has the gods dies later.
And she died in childbirth.
Right.
But it's funny to look at Laban. He recognized while Jacob was working for him, he said, I can see God has blessed you. Everything of mine that you've worked for, has prospered.
Yeah.
And God speaks to him in a dream, and he says, your God of your father spoke to me, but he still doesn't catch on.
Clueless. Completely. He just doesn't want to see it.
Yeah, he's a pagan through and through.
It's people.
It's people behavior. Come, we were all there.
I just think of Capernaum. Every time I kind of try to wrap my head around it, it's like when you see the miracles in front of you and you still don't recognize him. Time and time again, he said, if the miracles were done with you as they were in Tyre and Sidon, if the miracles were done with you in Sodom and Gomorrah, they would have turned around. But you are so stubborn and so blind, you refuse to see. And it scares me that we can be that blinded because of what we want and how we want to live our lives that we miss him.
Self-deceived.
Yeah. So we need to be careful. But if you find your gods with someone, that person will not remain alive. So with our kinsmen to witness, if you spot anything that I have which belongs to you, take it back. Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen him. Laban went to Jacob's tent and then into Leah's tent and into the tent of the 2 slave girls, but he did not find them. He left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent, but Rachel had taken the household gods, put them in the saddle of the camel and was sitting on them. Laban felt all around the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, please don't be angry that I'm not getting up in your presence, but it's the time of my period, the time of what do you guys have in yours?
The manner of woman.
The manner of woman. So he searched, but he didn't find the household gods. Now again, it's interesting that she dies in childbirth, when the deception was because of that cycle. Then Jacob became angry and started arguing with Laban. What have I done wrong? He demanded. What is my offense that you have come after me in hot pursuit? You have felt all around my stuff, but what have you found of all your household goods? Put it here in front of my kinsmen and yours, so that they can render judgment between the 2 of us. And I have been with you for these 20 years. Your female sheep and your goats haven't aborted their young. I haven't eaten the male animals in your flocks. If one of the flock was destroyed by a wild animal, I didn't bring the carcass to you, but bore the loss myself. You demanded that I compensate you for any animal stolen, whether by day or by night. Here's how it was for me during the day. Thirst consumed me, and at night cold. My sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I have served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the one whom Isaac fears, had not been on my side, by now you would have certainly had already sent me away with nothing. God has seen how distressed I've been and how hard I've worked, and last night he passed judgment in my favor. Laban answered Jacob, these daughters are mine. The children are mine, the flocks are mine, and everything you see is mine. But what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or the children they have borne? Why does he say everything you see here is mine?
Well, if you take the law later on, which Moses writes, is that if you have a servant or slave and you give them a wife, all the children they have belong to your master.
Yeah.
And so I think it's maybe on that precept that he's, that thing applied.
He's holding on.
Right from there, yeah.
All right, that's one way of looking at it.
I can't remember. I know if you give a slave a wife and he has children, those children belong to the master.
Yeah.
If the slave comes there with his own wife and he leaves,
yes,
the master lets him go, then he can take his children with him.
Mm.
So, this might be a case. That's why he says they're all mine.
Possible.
Mm.
Or he is alluding to this fact that he came there with nothing. Just everything you see, everything that you have is accumulated in my house.
It's
This
because of him that
is because of me. Okay? Because even in that same with the Torah, it says even if you release him, he's supposed to actually release him with stuff. But instead, he kept on trying to steal it back. Okay? So you came in here with a stone for a pillow, and look at what you have. He says, so now come, let's make a covenant, I and you, and let it stand as a testimony between me and you. Jacob took a stone and set it upright as a standing stone. Jacob is remembering what? Where else did he put up a stone as a pillar, as a standing stone? Bethel, remember, God said, I'm the God of Bethel, time to go back. Remember, you're going to walk past this rock again and you're going to remember that I brought you back. He sets it up. This is something again, something that happened. Then Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather some stones, and they took stones and made a pile on them and ate there by the pile of stones. Laban called it Yegar Sahaduta, pile of witnesses in Aramaic, while Jacob called it Gal Ed, pile of witnesses in Hebrew. Laban said, this pile witnesses between me and you today. This is why it is called Gal Ed and also Hamitzpah, the watchtower. Because he said, may Adonai watch between me and you when we are apart from each other. If you cause pain to my daughters, or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, then even if no one is there with us, still God is witness between me and you. He's already got 4. Laban also said to Jacob, here is a pile, and here is the standing stone which I have set up between me and you. May this pile be a witness, and may the standing stones be a witness, that I will not pass beyond this pile to you, and you will not pass beyond this pile and this standing stone to me to cause harm. May the God of Abraham and also the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. But Jacob swore by the one his father Yitzchak feared. So there's a complete conversion. Remember when he was going there, it was God of my father. Now he's saying, by my God. Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and invited his kinsmen to the meal. They ate the food, spent the whole night on the mountain. I just want to read the next few verses. Early in the morning, Laban got up, kissed his sons and daughters and blessed them. Then Laban left and returned to his own place. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. And he called the place Mechanaim, which means 2 camps. Now, God is allowing this thing to play out, right? He said, okay, you need to go. So he leaves. He allows Laban to catch up to him, stops Laban, has a conversation with him, showing Jacob what? He said it would protect him. Remember, he said he's going to do that. Now, why is that a big thing?
Because he's fulfilling a promise he made to him.
Part of, but remember, he's also setting up a future issue.
He's going to meet Esau.
Right. You're not really scared of Laban,
And
but
he's scared of Esau.
but the big hairy one is coming. Right? And he's really mad. He's been mad for the last 20 years. He's waiting to see your face.
And his madness has made the buildup.
If God can stop Laban and protect you in the midst of that, I need you to take hold of it and trust, because I promised you I will get you home. Right? He's not going to leave him until he has done everything that he promised. So it's like those moments of, do you see me? I'm still with you. Do you see me? I'm still with you. Do you see me? I'm still with you. And he allows him to experience these things to just reaffirm at times when he's probably a little bit nervous, to saying, I'm the one that's going to carry you through this. Okay, so God is setting up his next stage with lessons learned. Any questions? No?
Nope.
It's like, yes, go and pray into some of those things. Father, we just want to thank you again for this time together, and we thank you for your word. Father, I just pray that you continue to teach us and guide us and open up our hearts. If there's anything, Father, that we are sort of holding on to that we need to let go of, Father, I pray that you make known to us so that we can remove it from our hearts. Father, I pray as well that we would just find fullness in you, Father, as Yeshua met with the Samaritan woman at the well. Father, that we would fully and wholly identify as the bride of Christ, and Father, that we would do that in fullness and not letting our hearts belong to another and not let the past hurts define who we are. We just thank you, Father, that you came to look for us in the heat of the day so that we may belong to you. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.